Staff Sergeant Kayla Carter adjusted her rifle scope, watching the dust cloud rise from the distant convoy through the desert heat. Command had been clear: intercept and neutralize the weapons shipment at all costs. But as the vehicles drew closer, something felt wrong. The intelligence didn't match what she was seeing. In 6 hours, she would make a decision that would save innocent lives and destroy her military career. Sometimes doing what's right means standing completely alone. This story of courage and impossible choices is just beginning. Before we dive into Kayla's mission, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below, and let's get started. The briefing room smelled like burned coffee and old cigarettes. Staff Sergeant Kayla Carter sat in the back row, her notebook open on the plastic table. She always took notes, even when the mission seemed straightforward. 12 years in the Army had taught her that simple missions had a way of becoming complicated. Major Rodriguez clicked through satellite photos on the projector screen. Intelligence confirms a high-value weapons convoy will move through Grid Alpha 7 tomorrow at 1400 hours. 3 vehicles, approximately 12 enemy combatants. Kayla studied the photos. Rocky terrain, narrow road, perfect choke point. She'd seen dozens of similar missions. Anti-tank missiles, RPGs, and small arms, Rodriguez continued. These weapons are headed to cells operating near our forward bases. We stop this convoy, we save American lives. Sergeant First Class Mason, the team leader, raised his hand. Rules of engagement? Standard. Positive identification required. Minimize collateral damage. Rodriguez's eyes found Kayla in the back. Carter, you'll provide overwatch from IL-275. Range to target is approximately 400 meters. Copy that, sir. Kayla made a note. 400 meters was nothing. She could make that shot with her eyes closed. The major clicked to the next slide. Weather forecast shows clear skies, winds from the southeast at 5 knots. Perfect shooting conditions. Captain Williams, the intelligence officer, stepped forward. Local population has been cleared from the area for the past week. No civilians expected in the target zone. Something about that bothered Kayla, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Why clear civilians from such a remote area? After the briefing, the team gathered around the sand table model of the terrain. Mason pointed to various positions with a wooden stick. Jackson and Torres, you'll set up the roadblock here. Hernandez, you'll cover the rear escape route. Carter stays on the hill and takes out anyone who tries to fight through. Specialist Jackson looked at the model. Seems like overkill for one convoy. We could handle this without a sniper. Mason shrugged. Orders are orders. Command wants maximum firepower for this one. Kayla packed her gear in the armory that evening. Her rifle, an M24 sniper weapon system, lay disassembled in its case. She'd carried this rifle through 2 deployments. Every scratch told a story, every adjustment reflected hard-earned experience. The scope was particularly important. She'd zeroed it herself at the range just 3 days ago. At 400 meters, she could put 5 rounds through a quarter-sized hole. The rifle was an extension of her body, a tool she trusted completely. Corporal Mendez walked up to her workstation. You nervous about tomorrow? No more than usual. Kayla ran a cleaning patch through the barrel. Simple mission. In and out. Yeah, but these weapons convoys have been getting more sophisticated. Better trained guards, improved vehicles. Kayla looked up from her rifle. Mendez was young, maybe 22, and this was his first deployment. She remembered being that anxious. The mission doesn't change, she said. You do your job, I do mine. Trust your training. Mendez nodded and walked away, but Kayla could see he was still worried. She finished cleaning her rifle and reassembled it with practiced movements. Stock, barrel, bolt. Each piece fit perfectly. She attached the scope and looked through it across the armory. Clear and sharp. In her bunk that night, Kayla reviewed the mission details one more time. The photos showed a straight section of road between two hills. The convoy would have no choice but to travel slowly through the narrow passage. But something still nagged at her. In 12 years, she'd learned to trust her instincts. They'd kept her alive when intelligence reports were wrong, when plans fell apart, when nothing went as expected. The cleared civilian population bothered her most. This was a remote area with few people anyway. Why the special effort to evacuate everyone? She closed her eyes and tried to push the concerns away. Tomorrow would be a standard interdiction mission. 3 vehicles, 12 enemies, clear shooting conditions. By dinner time, the convoy would be neutralized and the weapons secured. At 0530, the helicopter engines started warming up on the landing pad outside. Kayla shouldered her pack and picked up her rifle case. The rest of the team was already moving toward the aircraft, their faces serious in the pre-dawn darkness. Time to go to work. But as she walked toward the helicopter, that nagging feeling grew stronger. Something about this mission wasn't right. The helicopter blades beat against the morning air as they flew over the desert landscape. Kayla sat with her rifle case between her knees, watching the terrain pass below. Rocky hills, scattered vegetation, and one narrow road cutting through the middle of it all. 2 minutes out, the pilot's voice crackled through her headset. Mason checked his watch. Remember, we have 4 hours until the convoy arrives. Use the time to get familiar with your sectors. The helicopter touched down on a flat area behind Hill 275. Kayla jumped out first, immediately scanning the surrounding area while the rotors still turned. The team moved quickly away from the landing zone, and within seconds, the aircraft lifted off and disappeared over the horizon. Silence fell over the desert. Only the sound of wind moving through the rocks. "Comms check," Mason said into his radio. Each team member responded in turn. Clear signals all around. Kayla began climbing the rocky slope toward her position. Her pack was heavy with extra ammunition, water, and observation equipment. The rocks were loose in places, requiring careful foot placement. She'd learned long ago that a twisted ankle could end a mission before it started. The climb took 20 minutes. At the top, she found the perfect spot behind a cluster of boulders that provided cover while giving her a clear view of the road below. She set down her pack and opened her rifle case. Assembly took 3 minutes. She worked methodically, checking each component before moving to the next. Scope mounted and locked. Bipod extended and adjusted. First magazine loaded with 5 rounds. Through her scope, she could see the entire kill zone. The road curved slightly as it passed between the hills, forcing vehicles to slow down. Mason and the others were already in position at the far end, invisible among the rocks. "Overwatch in position," she radioed. "Copy, Overwatch. Good view of the target area?" Kayla swept her scope across the road. "Crystal clear. I can see your position and the roadblock site. No movement in the area." She settled in for the wait. 4 hours was a long time, but patience was part of the job. She'd once waited 14 hours for a single shot in Afghanistan. This was nothing. The sun climbed higher, heating the rocks around her. She took small sips from her water bottle and watched the road through her scope. A few birds flew overhead, but otherwise, the area was empty. At noon, Mason's voice came through the radio. "All stations, convoy is approximately 2 hours out. Stay alert." Kayla adjusted her position slightly and wiped sweat from her forehead. The temperature was rising, but the wind remained steady from the southeast, just as the weather report had predicted. She practiced her breathing routine. In through the nose, hold for 3 seconds, out through the mouth. Steady heartbeat, relaxed muscles. When the time came, she needed to be perfectly calm. At 13:30 hours, she heard engines in the distance. "All stations, this is Overwatch. I have engine noise from the south." "Copy, Overwatch. Visual contact?" Kayla pressed her eye to the scope and adjusted the focus. A dust cloud appeared on the horizon, growing larger as it approached. "Dust cloud visible. Range approximately 2,000 meters in closing. Her heart rate increased slightly. This was always the moment when theory became reality. The first vehicle came into view. A pickup truck with mounted machine gun, just as the intelligence report had described. Behind it, a larger truck, then another pickup bringing up the rear. Visual contact. 3 vehicles as briefed. Lead vehicle is technical with mounted weapon. But as the convoy got closer, something caught her attention. The second vehicle was larger than expected, with what looked like canvas covering the back. Through small gaps in the canvas, she could see movement inside. Mason, the middle vehicle has occupants in the back. Multiple people. Copy. Probably guards riding with the weapons. Kayla kept watching through her scope. The convoy was now 800 meters away and moving slowly on the rough road. She could make out individual faces in the lead vehicle. But something was wrong with those faces. They looked too clean, too well-groomed for enemy combatants who'd been traveling through the desert. At 600 meters, she got a better look at the covered truck. Through a tear in the canvas, she saw a flash of light-colored clothing. Not military uniforms. Something else. Mason, I'm seeing what looks like civilian clothing in the middle vehicle. Are you sure? Kayla adjusted her scope's magnification. The convoy was now 500 meters away. Through the canvas opening, she could clearly see a woman wearing a white shirt. Medical scrubs, maybe. Or civilian clothes. Her stomach tightened. This wasn't matching the intelligence report at all. Command, this is Overwatch. I need clarification on the target. I'm seeing possible civilians in the convoy. Static filled her earpiece for several seconds. Overwatch, maintain position and await further instructions. The convoy was now 400 meters away, entering her optimal shooting range. But instead of weapons and enemy fighters, she was looking at what appeared to be prisoners in civilian clothes. Command, I'm seeing something that doesn't match our briefing. The convoy slowed to a crawl as it approached the narrow pass. Kayla kept her scope focused on the middle vehicle, trying to get a better look through the torn canvas. At 300 meters, she could see more clearly now. A man in the back of the truck wore a Red Cross symbol on his shirt. Medical personnel. Her breath caught in her throat. Command, this is Overwatch. I have positive identification of medical personnel in the target convoy. Request immediate clarification of rules of engagement. Static filled her earpiece again. She could hear voices in the background at the command post, but couldn't make out the words. Overwatch, maintain position and continue observation. Mason's voice came through on the team frequency. Carter, what exactly are you seeing down there? Kayla adjusted her scope's focus. Medical personnel. Red Cross markings. These aren't enemy combatants, Mason. They look like prisoners. The convoy was now 250 meters away. Through her scope, she could see the lead vehicle more clearly. The driver wore military fatigues, but the passenger looked nervous, constantly checking mirrors and scanning the hillsides. Command, request immediate guidance. Target does not match intelligence briefing. Overwatch, maintain observation. Do not engage until further orders. That was when she heard Jackson's voice on the radio. Movement on the eastern ridge. Multiple contacts approaching our position. Kayla swung her scope toward the eastern hills. Through the magnification, she could see armed figures moving between the rocks. At least 20, maybe more. They were flanking the team's position. Command, this is Overwatch. Enemy reinforcements approaching from the east. Approximately 20 to 30 combatants. Mason's voice was tense. All stations, we have company. Jackson, how close are they? 800 meters in closing. They'll have us surrounded in 10 minutes. The situation was falling apart fast. Kayla kept switching between watching the convoy and tracking the enemy reinforcements. The convoy had stopped completely now, sensing something was wrong. Command, this is team leader. Request immediate extraction. We're about to be overrun. Major Rodriguez's voice crackled through the radio. Team leader, you are authorized to abort mission. Move to extraction point Alpha immediately. Copy, command. All stations, we're pulling out. Move to extraction point Alpha now. Kayla watched through her scope as Mason and the others began their withdrawal. They moved quickly but carefully, using the terrain for cover. The enemy reinforcements were getting closer. But she kept her scope on the convoy below. Now she could see faces more clearly. In the middle truck, a woman with blonde hair pressed against the canvas opening. Her eyes were wide with fear, but her clothes were clean medical scrubs. A nurse, maybe a doctor. Behind her, an older man with gray hair and glasses. He wore civilian clothes and had his hands zip-tied behind his back. Definitely a prisoner. Carter, move out now, Mason radioed. We don't have time. Kayla lifted her eye from the scope. Her team was already 300 meters away, moving toward the extraction point. The enemy reinforcements were closing in from multiple directions. But she looked back through her scope at the convoy. These weren't enemy fighters. These were humanitarian workers who'd been captured. Aid workers, doctors, nurses. People who'd come here to help, now being transported somewhere terrible. She remembered the intelligence briefing 3 weeks ago about missing humanitarian personnel. A medical team from Doctors Without Borders had disappeared while treating civilians in a remote village. The search had been called off after a week. Now she was looking at them. Carter, get moving. That's an order. Her finger rested on her rifle's safety. She could take the shot right now. Disable the lead vehicle, create chaos, maybe give the prisoners a chance to escape. But her orders were clear. Abort mission. Move to extraction. I'm coming, she radioed back. She started packing her equipment. Scope detached, rifle disassembled, everything back in the case. Her hands moved automatically while her mind raced. Through the rocks below, she could see the convoy starting to move again. The prisoners in the back were being taken somewhere. Prison camp, maybe. Or worse. The enemy reinforcements were now 400 meters from her position. She needed to move immediately or risk being cut off from her team. Kayla shouldered her pack and rifle case. She took one step away from her position, then stopped. She set down her equipment and assembled her rifle again. Through the scope, she could see the convoy was picking up speed, trying to get through the pass quickly. The blonde woman in medical scrubs was looking directly up at the hillside. Almost as if she knew someone was watching. Her eyes held a desperate hope that someone, somewhere, would see her. Carter, where are you? Mason's voice was getting more urgent. Kayla keyed her radio. I need another minute. We don't have another minute. Move now. She watched her team disappear over the ridge, heading for safety. The extraction helicopter would be waiting. In 30 minutes, they'd be back at base, filing mission reports about how enemy reinforcements forced them to abort. The convoy was now passing directly below her position. Perfect range, perfect angle. Carter, respond immediately. She turned off her radio. Through her scope, she could see the prisoners more clearly than ever. 5 people, all in civilian clothes or medical uniforms. All with their hands bound. All depending on someone to see them as human beings worth saving. The enemy reinforcements were now 200 meters away and closing fast. In 5 minutes, they'd overrun her position. Kayla chambered around and settled behind her rifle. Her breathing slowed to the familiar rhythm. Her heartbeat steadied. Sometimes doing what's right means standing completely alone. Kayla settled into her firing position. The convoy was 150 meters away, moving slowly through the rocky pass. She had maybe 3 minutes before the enemy reinforcements reached her position. She needed to make every shot count. Through her scope, she centered the crosshairs on the lead vehicle's engine block. The driver was scanning the hillsides, alert but not yet alarmed. She controlled her breathing, finger resting lightly on the trigger. The shot echoed across the desert. The lead vehicles had exploded in a cloud of steam and smoke. The engine seized immediately, and the truck rolled to a stop, blocking the narrow road. The driver jumped out, shouting in Arabic. 2 guards from the back of the pickup ran toward the disabled vehicle, their rifles ready. Kayla had already chambered her second round. She shifted her aim to the rear vehicle, putting a round through its radiator. Steam poured from under the hood as that engine died too. The convoy was trapped. The narrow pass prevented them from turning around, and the disabled vehicles blocked both directions. Guards poured out of all 3 trucks, taking cover behind the vehicles. Kayla counted 8 men with assault rifles. They were shouting commands, trying to figure out where the shots came from. She moved 15 feet to her left, using the rocks for cover. From this new position, she had a different angle on the convoy. 1 guard ventured away from the vehicles, trying to get a better view of the hillside. Kayla put him down with a clean shot to the chest. The man dropped behind a boulder. The other guards immediately opened fire on her previous position. Bullets sparked off the rocks where she'd been moments before. While they fired at empty space, Kayla moved again. She low-crawled 20 feet to the right, dragging her rifle. The enemy reinforcements were getting closer. She could hear their voices echoing off the canyon walls. From her new position, she could see inside the middle truck more clearly. The 5 prisoners were pressed against the far side of the vehicle, trying to stay away from the gunfire. The blonde woman in scrubs was shielding an older man with her body. A guard appeared at the back of the truck, grabbing one of the prisoners. The woman in scrubs. He was using her as a human shield while he scanned the hillside for targets. Kayla's jaw tightened. She shifted her aim carefully. The guard's shoulder was exposed just behind the prisoner's head. A difficult shot, but she'd made harder ones. The bullet took the guard in the shoulder, spinning him away from the prisoner. The woman fell back into the truck, unhurt but terrified. "Where is he?" one of the remaining guards shouted in accented English. "How many shooters?" They were getting nervous, confused. That was exactly what Kayla wanted. She moved again, this time crawling behind a ridgeline that put her 50 meters from her original position. The enemy reinforcements were now close enough that she could hear individual voices. Maybe 2 minutes before they reached the hilltop. From her new angle, she could see a guard trying to start one of the disabled vehicles. He was under the hood, working frantically on something. If he got one truck running, they could push through the roadblock. Kayla's 4th shot put him down permanently. The remaining guards were firing wildly now, spraying bullets in all directions. They had no idea where she was or how many people they were fighting. She used their confusion to move closer to the edge of the cliff. From here, she was only 75 meters from the convoy, but the steep angle made her nearly invisible. A guard ran toward the middle truck, apparently planning to use the prisoners as leverage. Kayla's 5th shot dropped him 10 feet from the vehicle. She was down to her last round in the magazine. Time to reload and change tactics. As she inserted a fresh magazine, she heard engines approaching from the north. The enemy reinforcements had vehicles. They'd be on top of her position in minutes. But she also heard something else. Helicopter rotors in the distance. Very faint, but definitely there. The cavalry might be coming, but not soon enough. She needed to create more chaos, make the enemy think they were facing a larger force. Psychological warfare. Kayla pulled a fragmentation grenade from her pack. She'd been saving it for emergencies. This qualified. She calculated the distance and trajectory, then threw the grenade toward a cluster of rocks 30 meters behind the convoy. It bounced twice before exploding, sending shrapnel in all directions. The guards immediately started firing toward the explosion, thinking they were being attacked from behind. While they were distracted, Kayla put a round through the fuel tank of the middle vehicle. Gasoline poured onto the ground, creating a growing puddle under the truck. "They're everywhere," one guard shouted. "We're surrounded." That was exactly what she wanted them to think. The sound of approaching vehicles was getting louder. The enemy reinforcements were less than a minute away. But the helicopter sound was getting stronger too. Kayla moved to her final position, a narrow crack between two boulders that gave her a perfect view of the convoy while keeping her completely hidden. She had maybe 30 seconds before the reinforcements arrived. Through her scope, she could see the prisoners clearly now. All 5 were alive, though obviously terrified. The blonde woman was talking to the others, probably trying to keep them calm. The remaining guards were in full panic mode. They'd lost more than half their number to an enemy they couldn't see or locate. Some were arguing about whether to fight or run. One guard ran to the middle truck and climbed into the driver's seat. He was going to try ramming through the roadblock, prisoners and all. Kayla put her crosshairs on his head and squeezed the trigger. The truck's engine turned over but didn't start. The guards slumped over the steering wheel. Vehicle engines roared from multiple directions now. The enemy reinforcements had arrived at the base of the hill and were starting their climb. But the helicopter sound was much closer too. American aircraft, definitely. Smoke was rising from the gasoline leak under the middle truck. One spark would turn the entire vehicle into a fireball with the prisoners still inside. The gasoline fumes were getting stronger. Kayla could smell them even from her position 75 meters away. One muzzle flash near that truck and the prisoners would burn alive. She counted her remaining ammunition. 8 rounds left. 3 guards still moving around the convoy, and at least 20 enemy reinforcements climbing the hillside behind her. The helicopter sound was definitely getting closer, but it was still several minutes away. A guard appeared at the back of the burning truck, shouting orders in Arabic. He grabbed the gray-haired man in civilian clothes and dragged him out of the vehicle. Through her scope, Kayla could see the man's face clearly now. Dr. Richard Martinez, according to the missing persons briefing she'd memorized 3 weeks ago. Lead physician with Doctors Without Borders. The guard pressed his pistol against Dr. Martinez's head. American sniper, the guard yelled in English. Show yourself or this one dies. Kayla kept perfectly still. The guard was using the doctor as bait, trying to force her to reveal her position. 10 seconds, the guard shouted. Then he dies. Dr. Martinez looked directly up at the hillside. His eyes found the cluster of rocks where Kayla was hidden. Somehow, he knew she was there. He shook his head slightly. Don't do it. Don't give up your position for me. 5 seconds. The other prisoners were crying now. The blonde woman in scrubs was reaching through the truck's canvas, trying to grab Dr. Martinez's hand. 3, 2. Kayla lined up her shot. The guard's head was partially hidden behind Dr. Martinez, but she could see enough. A sliver of forehead above the doctor's left shoulder. The shot was impossible for most snipers. Too close to the hostage, too small a target, too much wind. But Kayla had made impossible shots before. She controlled her breathing, felt her heartbeat slow to its familiar rhythm, and squeezed the trigger. The guard's head snapped back. Dr. Martinez stumbled forward but stayed on his feet, unharmed. The remaining 2 guards immediately opened fire in her direction. Bullets chipped the rocks around her position, forcing her to stay low. But now she could hear boots on the hillside behind her. The enemy reinforcements were less than 50 meters away, moving fast. She rolled out of her position and low-crawled toward a different cluster of rocks. 30 meters to her left, with a better view of the truck and more escape routes. As she moved, she saw Dr. Martinez helping the other prisoners out of the burning truck. The gasoline leak was spreading, and the engine was making dangerous clicking sounds as it cooled. One of the remaining guards ran toward the escaping prisoners, rifle raised. Kayla shot him center mass without even using her scope. Instinct shooting at close range. The last guard took cover behind the rear vehicle and started firing systematically at every rock formation on the hillside. He was experienced, patient, working his way across her possible hiding spots. Behind her, she could hear the enemy reinforcements getting closer. Voices, equipment rattling, boots on stone. There, someone shouted in Arabic. Movement behind the large boulder. They'd spotted her. Automatic weapons fire erupted from the hillside above her position. Bullets sparked off the rocks, sending stone fragments flying. She pressed herself flat against the ground and crawled toward a narrow crevice between two boulders. The helicopter sound was much louder now. Definitely American aircraft, probably Apache gunships. But the prisoners were still in the kill zone, and the fuel leak was getting worse. From her new position, she could see Dr. Martinez and the others had taken cover behind the disabled lead vehicle. They were out of the truck, but still trapped in the convoy area. The last guard was moving toward them, using the vehicles for cover. He had a clear shot at the prisoners from his angle. Kayla lined up her crosshairs and fired. The bullet took the guard high in the shoulder, spinning him around but not dropping him. He fell behind the middle truck, wounded but still dangerous. 6 rounds left. The enemy reinforcements were now close enough that she could hear individual voices clearly. They were spreading out, trying to surround her position. She's in the rocks near the cliff edge, one of them called out. Move up from the south side. Cut off her escape route. They were coordinating professionally, like trained soldiers rather than irregular fighters. Kayla pulled her last grenade from her pack. If she could create enough confusion, maybe the prisoners could run for better cover. She threw the grenade toward the approaching enemy forces. It bounced off a rock face and exploded 30 meters behind her position. The explosion echoed across the canyon, and for a moment, the shooting stopped. That's when she heard it clearly. Not just one helicopter, but several. The distinctive sound of multiple aircraft approaching fast. Through the ringing in her ears from the grenade explosion, she could hear radio chatter. American voices. This is Viper 1-1. I have eyes on the target area. Multiple hostiles, American personnel in the kill zone. Viper 1-1, this is ground control. You are cleared to engage hostile forces. Avoid the convoy area, friendly personnel on site. The first Apache gunship appeared over the eastern ridge, its 30mm cannon already rotating toward the enemy positions. This is Apache Viper 1-1 to ground element. Identify your position immediately. Kayla keyed her radio, which she'd turned back on during the fighting. Viper 1-1, this is Staff Sergeant Carter. I'm in the rocks 75 meters northwest of the convoy. 5 friendly prisoners at the vehicle position. Copy, Carter. Stay low. We're coming in hot. The Apache opened fire on the hillside behind her. The 30mm cannon rounds exploded like thunder, tearing through the rocks where the enemy reinforcements were positioned. A second helicopter appeared, then a third. The enemy forces were caught in the open, taking fire from multiple directions. But the wounded guard near the convoy was still moving. Kayla could see him crawling toward the prisoner's position, rifle in his hands. She had a clear shot, but it would expose her to any remaining enemy forces on the hillside. Dr. Martinez saw the guard approaching. The doctor picked up a rock and threw it, hitting the guard in the head and buying precious seconds. Kayla took the shot. Her bullet ended the threat permanently. 5 rounds left, but the immediate danger was over. The Apache gunships were systematically destroying the enemy positions. Explosions echoed across the canyon as the helicopters eliminated the reinforcements. Ground element, this is Viper 1-1. Area is secure. Medical evacuation en route. Kayla stood up slowly, her legs shaky from adrenaline. Below her, she could see the 5 prisoners waving at the helicopters. All alive, all safe. But smoke was still rising from the convoy, and she could hear sirens in the distance. The reckoning was about to begin. The medical helicopter landed 20 minutes later. Kayla watched from her position on the hillside as paramedics rushed to check the 5 rescued prisoners. None appeared seriously injured, just exhausted and dehydrated. Dr. Martinez looked up at the rocks where she was hidden and nodded once. A simple acknowledgement between 2 people who understood what had just happened. Kayla climbed down from her position, her rifle slung across her back. Her legs felt unsteady after the adrenaline wore off. She'd used 11 rounds and saved 5 lives, but she knew the real battle was just beginning. Major Rodriguez was waiting for her at the bottom of the hill, his face stone cold. "Staff Sergeant Carter, you are under arrest for disobeying direct orders and abandoning your unit in combat." 2 military police soldiers stepped forward. One took her rifle, the other her sidearm. "You have the right to remain silent," Rodriguez continued. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court-martial." Kayla said nothing. She extended her hands as the MPs applied zip ties to her wrists. Behind Rodriguez, she could see the rescued prisoners being loaded onto stretchers. The blonde woman in scrubs turned toward her and mouthed the words "thank you" before disappearing into the helicopter. 12 years of exemplary service, Rodriguez said as they walked toward the waiting transport helicopter. "And you throw it all away for what? 5 people you don't even know?" Kayla looked back at the convoy. The trucks were still smoking, and the ground was stained with fuel and blood. But 5 human beings were alive who would have been dead or worse by nightfall. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. The flight back to base took 40 minutes. Kayla sat between 2 MPs, watching the desert pass below. She thought about her daughter back home, about the college fund she'd been building, about the retirement she'd planned for after 20 years of service. All of that was probably gone now. At the base, they put her in a holding cell while they prepared the paperwork. The walls were concrete, the bed was a metal platform with a thin mattress. She'd seen worse accommodations. Mason visited her that evening. "They're talking about a general court-martial," he said through the bars. "Disobeying orders, abandoning your post, reckless endangerment. You could be looking at 10 years in military prison." Kayla sat on the edge of the metal bed. "How are the prisoners?" "They're fine. All 5 checked out healthy. Doctors Without Borders is calling them heroes for surviving 3 weeks in captivity." "Good." Mason shook his head. "That's all you have to say? Good? Carter, you destroyed your career. Your daughter's college fund, your pension, everything. Those people would be dead if I'd followed orders. That wasn't your decision to make. We're soldiers, not heroes. We follow orders." Kayla looked up at him. Mason was a good man, a good soldier. He'd followed his training and his orders exactly as he was supposed to. She didn't blame him for that. "Sometimes following orders is wrong," she said. Mason left without saying goodbye. The preliminary hearing was held 3 days later. Kayla sat at a metal table in her dress uniform, flanked by a court-appointed defense attorney who looked like he'd graduated law school last month. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. Disobeying direct orders from a superior officer. Abandoning her unit during combat operations. Engaging enemy forces without authorization. The evidence was overwhelming because Kayla didn't deny any of it. "Staff Sergeant Carter," the prosecutor said, "do you understand that military discipline depends on soldiers following orders, even when they disagree with those orders?" "Yes, sir." "And do you understand that your actions put your fellow soldiers at risk by forcing them to operate without sniper support?" "Yes, sir." "Then why did you disobey direct orders?" Kayla looked across the courtroom. In the back row, she could see Dr. Martinez and the blonde woman from the convoy. They'd been allowed to attend as witnesses. "Because those people needed help, and I was the only one in position to provide it. That's not an acceptable reason for disobeying orders, Sergeant." "It's the only reason that mattered, sir." The defense attorney tried his best, but there wasn't much he could do. Kayla had clearly violated military law, and the Army needed to send a message that orders were not optional. Then Dr. Martinez was called to testify. "Dr. Martinez," the prosecutor said, "can you tell the court what happened during your captivity?" "We were captured 3 weeks ago while treating civilians in a remote village. Our captors told us we would be taken to a prison camp across the border. Based on what we'd heard about that facility, none of us expected to survive." "And what happened during the convoy attack?" Dr. Martinez looked directly at Kayla. Staff Sergeant Carter saved our lives. She could have followed her orders and left us to die. Instead, she risked everything to give us a chance. The blonde woman testified next. Dr. Sarachin, head nurse for the medical team. Your Honor, she said, I've worked in war zones for 15 years. I've seen soldiers who follow orders and soldiers who follow their conscience. Sergeant Carter is the kind of person who reminds us why we're fighting in the first place. The prosecutor objected, but the damage was done. After 3 hours of testimony, the panel of officers retired to deliberate. Kayla waited in the holding cell, staring at the ceiling. 2 hours later, they called her back into the courtroom. Staff Sergeant Carter, the presiding officer said, this panel finds you guilty of disobeying direct orders and abandoning your post. However, given the extraordinary circumstances and the lives saved by your actions, this panel recommends clemency. Kayla felt her knees go weak. You will be reduced in rank to sergeant and forfeit 6 months' pay. You will also be transferred to a non-combat assignment for the remainder of your enlistment. It wasn't the outcome anyone expected, but Kayla didn't care about rank or pay. As she left the courtroom, Dr. Chin approached her. Sergeant, she said quietly, thank you for seeing us as human beings first. Outside the courthouse, Kayla looked up at the desert sky. Her career was damaged but not destroyed. Her daughter would still go to college. And 5 people were alive who shouldn't be. Sometimes that was enough. If this story of courage and moral conviction moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible military stories. What would you have done in Kayla's position? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your perspectives.